So this is the part 2 of exception handling tutorial, and in this tutorial we are going to cover 3 keywords, which is throw, then throws, and the keyword finally. So we are going to cover these 3 keywords in this tutorial. In the previous tutorial we have already created this program which make use of try and catch blocks, and you can see that there are nested try and catch blocks. And in this tutorial we have already discussed how we can actually catch a particular exception which was captured by Java runtime, right? So we know how Java runtime creates an object or an instance of that exception and throws it, and we will catch that exception in the catch statement block. So let's first study about this finally keyword. So let's suppose now your program has executed this whole try block, it has found some exception, and now it has run this catch block also. So let's suppose now you want to run some few programming statements or some more statements after all the try catch blocks have been executed. So after all the try catch blocks have been executed, so now you can mention here the finally block. Finally means that it is going to run for the final time, right? So after all the try catch statement, if you write finally keyword followed by its own block of statements, you can run some block of statements after all the try catch blocks. So this will be useful in a lot of cases, right? So this is the final run. So now let's take a look at the throw keyword. So we know that whenever there is an exception which is basically a runtime error. So whenever there is any runtime error, our JVM will just throw that error, right? So JVM will only throw an error if it exists. So a programmer can throw an error by creating an instance of that particular exception by using this throw keyword. So this can be done explicitly. So let's suppose after in this try statement, let's suppose I want to explicitly throw an illegal access exception. So first I will create an instance of it, illegal access exception, like this. So now after these whole try catch, after all these statements, now it will just throw this illegal access exception, and let's write some information of this exception in here, like this. So throw keyword is used to explicitly throw a particular type of exception. For that you will have to use the new keyword, so that you will the object with this description will be allocated in the memory. So let me just write this after here. Okay, so since we are throwing it explicitly, we will also have to catch it. That's why it is showing a red line here. So we will have to catch this exception, and we know that this is an illegal access exception E, like this. And I'm going to just print out using the system.println. I'm going to write here illegal access exception thrown explicitly by programmer. Right, so a programmer can explicitly throw a particular exception even if that exception does not exist. So you will have to catch that exception also using the catch block. So this is the main use of throw. So now let's move on to the last keyword, which is throws. So throws keyword is basically used to mention whether a function is throwing a particular exception. So what I'm just going to do here is, let's create a function. It is a static void, let's say test throw function. So we have made this function static because we are not creating an instance of this class. So static, the compiler will run this test throw function as soon as this program is run. So static void test throw function will throw this null pointer exception, right? So I'm going to create an instance of this null pointer exception, and let's describe this as null pointer demo. Right, so you can see that this function is a test throw function, and the programmer is just throwing this null pointer exception using the throw keyword. So now let's suppose there is this function main makes a call to this test throw function. So let's make a call to the test throw function. Since the test throw function is throwing an exception, so you can see that this is our main class, and main class is calling this test throw function. So what you will have to do is you will have to explicitly you will have to show that function is throwing an error, because this function does not know how to handle this error. So it will just we're just going to use throws keyword, which is to mention that this particular function is throwing or is capable of throwing a particular exception. It's a null pointer exception, right? So this test throw function is throwing the null pointer exception. So now what you will have to do is, this is the test throw function, you will have to create a try block for this test throw function, and you can now catch this null pointer exception in the catch block. So now you can see that how we have used the three keywords, throw, throws, and finally. We have used finally so that it can run after all the try catch statement. We have used throw keyword here to create an instance of a particular exception and to throw it explicitly even if the exception does not exist, right? So using throws, which we are using here, we are mentioning that this, if any function will call this test throw function. So you can see that main function is calling this test throw function. So this function will have to specify that this function is throwing null pointer exception. You can see that here. So now the main function will be able to handle it using the try catch block. And so what we are going to do is we are going to display so let's say this is NE. So I'm going to write it like this. So let's program and see the output of this program. Okay, so there are some errors in this program. Okay, so there is an extra okay, so here we have missed a semicolon, so that was the error. So now you can see that it first throws the index out of bounds exception, which is here. Then since we have called this illegal access exception demo, so you can see here that illegal access exception is thrown explicitly by programmer, and you can see that after all the try catch block, the finally block is run, and after that we are calling the null pointer exception, and you can see here that it has displayed this null pointer exception. So that's the main use of throws, and finally. So in the next tutorial we are going to study multi-threaded programming, which is a very important concept, and we will use this concept of multi-threaded programming in creating applets. So thanks for watching.